by the man, Ben Rasa. How you doing?
I'm all right, man. Happy Friday. Football's over, but we do have a lot. We were talking before the show. There's a decent amount of stuff going on in the sports world still.
Yeah, you'd think that it would just be kind of the dead zone, but there is a lot going on. And, you said, usually this is, the end, football season is over. You have this sad downtrodden period of, 6 months with no football. But that leads me right into, I mean, how excited are you for the Alliance of American Football League? You've been all in on these games?
I really haven't, but I feel like I'm kind of missing out. It crept up on me, and now I love college football, and this is just like kind of a hybrid. All these guys are like college darlings, guys that kind of flamed out of the NFL. So it seems right up my alley. I'm gonna have to start digging into some of these teams.
Yeah, same here. I didn't realize I needed Trent Richardson back in my life, but,
Like this
but
is
here he is.
what could be better than that? And these like some of these names, the Birmingham Iron, like some of these
Oh
teams
yeah.
are definitely I could see taking a few. I'm surprised they haven't run contests, to be honest. I think the sites are probably going to do it eventually, but I expected them right from the get go.
I think so too. And what I've seen is that there actually is like a decent betting market for these games. And I looked at the lines for these games, and granted, I didn't follow last week very closely. Just looking at it, I don't know. I mean, do you have any thoughts on any of the games? I mean, we really don't have any level of expertise here. I mean, we're talking about like Christian Hackenberg and a lot of these failed, flamed out quarterbacks, but
It,
it's interesting.
For me, obviously, like I said, I have not dug in, but what I'll probably do is just sit down and watch a game and try to hit it live. You get a feel for what's going on.
Yeah.
It looks a little wide open. Obviously, it's somewhat dynamic. They got a couple new wrinkles that make it exciting. But I could see myself jumping on, live saying some of these teams, it looks like a kind of a back and forth type of game. Maybe that's how I'll intro into this because I really haven't seen much.
Yeah, so maybe our homework assignment for next week will be
Okay.
to watch a few games, kind of get a feel for it. Uh, from my kind of preliminary research, I quickly realized that there's no extra points. So the totals and the lines, you kind of take that into account, right? Your typical 3 and 7, you know, key numbers aren't going to be quite the
Yeah.
same if there's no extra points. Uh, I know there's some different defense rules where they can only rush a certain amount of players, and they're really interested on player safety. Apparently, I mean, who knows?
Who
You know,
knows? I saw
so-
some monster hits. I don't know how true that is.
yeah,
People look like
exactly.
they're getting their heads ripped off, but like anything, obviously in the beginning that it's going to be inefficient. It'll tighten up, but if you jump on it, I think you bring up a good key point about the numbers. You're going to be finding scores ending on different types of numbers, and we can kind of take advantage of that, especially in the early stages.
Yeah, absolutely. It's completely inefficient at this point, and I think it'll be interesting. I'd like to dig in a little bit, like you said, and really, spend a little bit of time. I'm not even sure if the games are televised. Do you know? I should probably look into that.
They
They must be.
I think they're on like originally, they debuted, they were on CBS, but I think they're on like CBS Sports Network.
Okay.
With all those, I'm sure it's somewhere. There's so many channels out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna look in for next week's show. I'm gonna bring some hot takes on the old Atlanta Legends or Orlando Apollos.
All right. I'll dig in like San Diego Fleets
So yeah,
and
that's your account out west.
Commanders, and you got some cool names. I'll give them credit for that.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. Obviously the XFL, they started out, they had you're going to get a temporary boost at the beginning. Can they keep people sustained, and can they obviously scale it and make it somewhat exciting? We'll see.
Yeah, one last point on that, which was interesting. I was just reading a little bit about the league, and they were saying the guy who started it, it's Polian, and then it's this
Mhm.
other guy, Dick Ebersol's son, and he was the one who did the 30 for 30 on the XFL,
Hmm.
and he kind of got the idea from doing that documentary that like somebody could actually come in and do this successfully and kind of improve on the product that the XFL had.
Yeah, hopefully he learned what not to do
Yeah,
in some
exactly.
instances. But yeah, it does seem, last thing, and then I'll obviously jump into some other stuff. It does seem like there is room. People love football so much for a different type of league to catch on in some capacity.
Yeah, yeah, it just tells you the power of football. I mean, I saw that something that the ratings were higher than any nationally televised NBA game already, and
It's insane.
that's week one. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
It's yeah. I mean, there's always a market for that. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So let's transition. We talked at the beginning that it doesn't seem like there'd be a lot going on, but in actuality, there really is a lot this weekend. We want to get into a little bit with the All Star game for the NBA. We have golf, we have NASCAR, so we're going to try and hit on a little bit of everything. We have college basketball, obviously, that's continuing. We'll get on that too. So why don't we start with the All Star weekend? I'm an NBA junkie, so I've always loved the All Star weekend. Just kind of going back 20 plus years, not to give my age or show my age here, but it was always such an attraction, and like all the big players, big names were always in like All Star Saturday. So obviously, in the last, I don't know, 8 to 10 years, they brought on some different events, and it starts tonight. The first event, is the Rising Stars game. Have you taken a look at any of the lines, or we have odds that we can talk about for the MVP on that game? What are your thoughts on that, Ben?
Yeah, so they obviously keep, they've done like versus the world. They keep mixing it up. So, rookies versus sophomores. I like All Star. It's obviously I do love the NBA. This is a fun time. It's from Charlotte this year. I will be tuning in. I do watch this, and I certainly watch Saturday. The game itself to me is honestly the worst part. I'm not the biggest All Star game fan. But for tonight, I did look into, if I wanted to take a shot on someone in terms of an MVP, and I'm just going to take a stab. These games, obviously, there's no defense. I think
Yeah.
someone like Trey Young, he's 14-1. Obviously, your mileage is going to vary with depending what book you're at. You're going to find better and worse than that, I'm sure. But in a game, obviously, he's not shy. He loves to shoot. Exciting player, especially when he gets going from outside. He's the type of guy that I think you could look to if you want to have some fun and take a shot.
Yeah, he's a good pick because if he gets going and gets
Mhm.
heated up, I mean
He'll
he's going
keep
to start
shooting.
chucking. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was looking at it too, and there's some guys who are more of a favorite that we could talk about, and you're not going to get great value on Luca or Simmons, even though they're clearly going to be the favorites to be the MVP in this game. I was looking at Laurie Markkinen, who's at about 15-1, so similar range as Trey Young, and I'm full disclosure, I'm a Bulls fan,
Ooh.
diehard. Even though it's incredibly painful over the last, let's
I mean,
say.
I'm a Knicks fan. It's bad here too.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So, I mean, at least I can hang my hat on the 90s and a little bit of the 80s. But yeah, so it's been rough. But going back, I mean, Laurie is the kind of guy who he's really been playing well the last week or two, closing out this portion of the season. He's been putting up over 25 a game. He's another guy who doesn't always need the ball in his hand to really be active part of the offense, which is key in this kind of scenario where guys like Trey Young are just going to chuck it as soon as they get it, and
yeah.
everybody's just going to want their own. So I think he can maybe find a way to get involved without having the ball in his hands every single time they come down the floor. So I like him. I think that's some pretty good value at about 15-1. Like we said, I mean, it definitely varies from book to book, and with these kind of events, those numbers move pretty quickly.
Wildly. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't always get a lot on them either, right? You can't get a lot down on these
No.
kind of bets.
No, I mean, this is just for entertainment. It's fun. You can take it's long shots. Most of the bets that I like on All Star Weekend, so you only got to kind of hit one, and why not? And yeah, I think Morgan is interesting just because obviously he can score. He can be a little more dynamic. The reason I was with Trey Young is you kind of touched upon it. It's nice that he can just dictate the ball because in this, having the ball is king. He can determine he can go right up, shoot, and if he gets going, there's going to be more incentive to just keep firing, and that's obviously what you want in a situation like this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And one quick plug: I know our boy Emac published something on the site,
All
I
right.
believe yesterday, a Rising Stars challenge. So check that out. We'll try to link it in the chat here, but it's a free article. You guys can check out him breaking down the Rising Stars game. Does a little bit of the history of the game, which I thought was interesting. Some of the old box scores and You can see that it often gets into the 150s.
Yeah, the over-unders are like 300. It's absurd.
Yeah, yeah, it's insane. I mean, it's basically just the All-Star game where everyone's just chucking and there's zero defense. So it's entertaining. It's fun to put something on it and get a little sweat, from somebody who's more of a long shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good warm up. I do like the way they structure it. Obviously, you get this game tonight, then you move into Saturday night, which to me is the best night. You've got the skills competition, the 3-point shootout, and the dunk contest, all of which I usually do bet them. It's obviously fun. You can get some good odds. Do you have thoughts? Do you want to tackle those on the show today?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I agree with you that All-Star Saturday night has always been, I found, to be just the marquee event. Even when the players cared about the actual All-Star game, I never found it that entertaining, to be honest. So yeah, I love Saturday night. The skills competition, like I was alluding to earlier, it's relatively new. I think it's been around, I don't know, maybe about 15 years now. But what they had done only a few years ago was do kind of a bracket format where they brought in big guys. And so over the last 3 years, they started doing it with centers and bigs. Porzingis did it. Karl Anthony Towns has done it, and both of them have won. So it's interesting that 2 out of the last 3 years that they've had the big guys involved, somebody has won it coming from that bracket. So that being said, I like Jokic. I'm a big fan of his.
There you go.
I know you are too, Ben. He right now, what I've seen is about 8-1 in that range. I think that may have come down in some places because that does seem like a pretty sharp bet. And he's just so talented with the ball, and his passing level is elite. And I've seen guys get hung up on that pass portion of it.
Yeah, that'll kill you through the little thing.
Yeah, like just a little chest pass or bounce pass into the target, like, seems pretty simple, but obviously it's not.
No, it's so yeah, similar Emac, I actually put an article, we'll get it up on the site this morning, and it's breaking down the skills competition, 3-point shootout, and the dunk contest. So feel free to check that out. And the guy that I kind of zeroed in on also was Jokic. I'll throw, you mentioned the bigs, your boy Larry Markin, and another one who competed and won. So you got to like their chances. Obviously, it's guaranteed that one of the bigs and one of the guards will meet in the finals. And yeah, the other thing I like about him is he competed in this 2 years ago. How much that really matters, I have no idea, but it can't hurt. So he has seen the format. He has done the course, for lack of a better word. And I do think he really does have the skill set. Obviously, with the passing, he can shoot no problem. And you're getting 8-1. That's certainly not the worst price in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know how you can really quantify the experience component of something like this, but like you said, it can't hurt.
No. Yeah, exactly. Like I did bank on that a little for some of these events. Obviously, when I'm just scanning the odds, you've got Trae Young, you've got Luka, and you've got De'Aaron Fox, all obviously guys that you can look to, but they're more in the 3 to 4-1 range. And they're competing against each other. Now, that they're going to cannibalize, obviously. Even if they have great scores, only one guard can come out of this.
Yeah, exactly. You have this new component to it as of a few years ago where, like you said, I mean, a lot of those guys would be favorites, but only one of them can get through the guard, component, the guard bracket of this tournament. The other bigs that are in it this year, I mean, you have Vucevic and a couple other guys. I mean, I just think Jokic is so above and more talented, clearly with the ball in his hands and as a passer and a shooter.
Yeah, I honestly, I mean, again, did I really take too much into it? But I thought that his odds would be more towards the guards because I think he is the clear favorite for the bigs. And when you factor in price, it's not even close for me. I like that value of a guy that, again, he does have the skill set for something like this as rare and odd as it is.
Yeah. All right. So we're in agreement.
Let's do it. Put it on the board.
We're going to fire on Jokic. We're definitely going to move the line between the two of us, and he'll be even money by tomorrow night. And
he'll be eliminated swiftly, probably. But
oh, definitely.
Yeah. That's always, like I said, they do that first. It's a good one. Then you get into I think the more iconic, obviously the 3-point shoot and the dunk contest have been around. A lot of good moments over the years in those two.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so let's move on to the 3-point contest. So just kind of scanning the odds. Do you have, a favorite, ish that you like, and then maybe a long shot just for pure value?
So obviously, so I believe it's up to 10 guys this year, which, that makes it tough. Steph is obviously the favorite. He's won this. He lost to Clay. I believe that was 2016. His brother's in it, which is an interesting wrinkle. So I'll give you, if I had to take one of the better, one of the favorites, it would be Buddy Hield. I think he's just the way he shoots. He can get crazy hot. We saw that with Devin Booker, who's the defending champ and in the tournament. I think the way Hield kind of just naturally plays sets up. But if you want a long shot, I will go all the way to the bottom and take the hometown Kemba Walker. Cardiac Kemba, another one who, not that I think being at home helps, but it certainly doesn't hurt. Longest odds on the board at some of the books that I've seen. Again, you're going to vary from site to site, and he can get streaky hot. So I don't mind that. Maybe I believe it's 3 guys move on to the finals. I could see him being one of those 3, and then at that time, you're really kind of in a virtual toss-up to take it down.
Yeah, nobody's really talking about Kemba. There's a lot of buzz, obviously, about Steph. He's always going to be the favorite in these kind of shooting contests. Just naturally, he is the best shooter. Buddy is, I think is the second or third, highest favorite, and is not getting a lot of buzz. And I think that's a good pick. The guy that I was looking at is just below or a little bit lower is Joe Harris, another guy who doesn't get a lot of pub, and he's actually leading the league this season in 3-point field goal percentage. Another guy who can get hot and really is a great shooter. His value is at about 8-1, and again, these numbers move, and depending on where you're getting it and when you get it, you might get worse value or better value. So it's always good to just kind of check multiple places. Keep an eye on it, see if the lines are moving. In something like this where there's not a ton of volume. Like we were talking about, these lines can move pretty quickly. But for me, I'll probably sprinkle a little bit on Joe Harris at about 8-1. I actually really like Kemba, now that you mention it, as probably the best value on the board.
Yeah, he's way down. Obviously, you got Dirk, who's in a category maybe of his own, but Kemba, I don't think there's that big a difference between him and some of the guys that are kind of in that 6, 7, 8-1 range. So if I've seen some 12, 14-1s out there on a guy like Kemba, I'm going to sprinkle there. And you bring up Joe Harris is a phenomenal shooter. He always was at Virginia. He's he's from the Kyle Korver mode, just catch shoot. It's very pure. Not a lot of people. I see more of him than most just because of New York. But yeah, I don't mind that at all. Seth Curry's a guy I looked at because he'll be motivated to try to beat his brother. I ultimately didn't get there. I think the name recognition does drive that price down a little, to be honest. And there's a lot of guys. It is tough to pick between, there's 10 of them.
Yeah, and this contest always seems to get the best shooters and kind of the best names, which has always been such a cool aspect of it. I mean, going back, so even like Larry Bird and like going back 20 years, you always got the best shooters in this contest. So I thought it's always been the most entertaining for me. I mean, the dunk contest obviously has its own kind of brand appeal and can be really cool, but the 3-point contest I've always found to be just more exciting and just a better field of players. Like Danny Green's another name that I was looking at 15-1. Another guy who can get really hot. In this kind of contest, it has to be sustained. So obviously any of these shooters can get hot and sustain it over 3 rounds, but another kind of just value play on the board. I saw him around 15-1. Just another guy to take a look at. But yeah, I think my top guy is going to be Joe Harris. Probably sprinkle a little bit on him and just kind of enjoy the evening and watch and see what happens.
Last guy, and then we can move on. Just a quick thought. No one, and neither of us mentioned him, the defending champ, Devin Booker, not going back-to-back.
It's a good point.
He's scary. I mean, yeah. I feel like he's getting a little overlooked, even by me. he can get crazy hot. We saw that last year.
Yeah, last year he set the record, I believe, in the last
Unstoppable.
round. Yeah, he's been hurt the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, but he came back the last game or two before the break. So assuming he's healthy and ready to go, I mean, there's no reason he can't do it again. I mean, he's an incredible shooter, as you said. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, you can get some good odds on these guys, but then you realize, well, this field is stacked. Like
Absolutely, yeah.
from 1 to 10. I mean, any one of them can clearly take this home.
Fair enough. We did have a quick question from chat asking about any college bets. We are certainly going to get there. I do have some college basketball that we will be breaking down, but we're going to tackle some All-Star weekend as well.
Yeah, we'll get to the college. Let's get through the rest of the All-Star weekend festivities for sure. I think these are fun things to bet. There is some edge. I mean, you definitely can do your research and get some edge on some of these bets. The dunk contest is probably not one of those,
No.
but it's down to 4 people, which they've done over the last few years. In my opinion, it's kind of lost its luster. The creativity hasn't been that great. The guys in it haven't been that great. Have you taken a look at it this year? So the 4 guys in it this year, you have Dennis Smith Jr., John Collins, Miles Bridges, and Hamidou Diallo.
I mean, it's just every so often you think there's going to be a resurgence. Jason Richardson had some really good years. Obviously, Dwight did. Aaron Gordon, who he didn't win, which is absurd. Him and Zach LaVine, obviously.
Yeah.
This is pretty bad though. These 4 dudes. This is one I've mentioned. We've obviously gone through skills and the 3-point shootout. I kind of like some under the radar guys. If I bet this, I think Dennis Smith Jr. is the clear favorite. He's been in the competition. He wants to win it. North Carolina kid, went to NC State. Incredible leaper, obviously. The other 3 guys, of course, are also super athletic, but I think Dennis Smith Jr. is the guy to beat. Even at the shortest odds on the board, I would back him and think he kind of coasts to victory here.
Yeah, as far as like name recognition, I mean, the average person probably is not going to know any of these players, right?
I guess he's the most. I mean, you got Hamidou Diallo. I would venture a lot of people don't know, and then you've got a guy on the Hawks. You've got Bridges, who's a rookie.
Right. Collins is a second-year player. I mean, they're all young.
Yeah.
Smith is a second-year player. They're all young guys and not big names. I mean, maybe because Dennis Smith was, part of the big trade, the Porzingis trade. But, yeah, it's just kind of interesting that the profile of the event seems to get smaller when it used to be the biggest event by far.
Yeah, they can't attract, obviously, the names as much. But I do think there is something to be said about guys. There are certain guys who want to win this. It's kind of on the priority list. And I think Dennis Smith Jr. is one of those guys.
I think so, too. And I think I agree with everything you're saying. I mean, Miles Bridges is the hometown kid. So there's always a level of subjectivity in this event.
Oh, yeah.
Like clearly, I mean, which is like the frustrating and maddening part of it. Going back forever, I mean, it's always kind of been that way. And so I could see something happening with him. Super athletic guy. I mean, he can definitely get above the rim. But again, it's so hard to handicap this kind of event. But I think you made good points on Dennis Smith. He really does want this.
It's really about that. You get the crowd involved early. You capture them. You could do the same dunk as someone else, and the reaction drives those tens on the board.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
It's not the best. I think more people are coming to our end of the pool in terms of the 3-point shootout is just clearly the superior event. I don't think there's any doubt anymore.
I think so too. Do you have any to put you on the spot here slightly? Do you have any memorable like specific dunk or just contest?
Obviously, I don't think I'm in a minority here. I thought Aaron Gordon's under the legs when he lost, that was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. Dwight Howard, when he didn't even dunk it, he threw it through when he had the Superman cape on. And then obviously I was a little young for Vince Carter, but I do remember it. So those were, it was great. Every so often you would get one where you either had two guys who are both really going for it, or just someone who is doing things you haven't seen in the contest. Uh, do you have any others like kind of? I was that next tier in terms of like in the early '90s. I don't really remember much of it, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I'll play the old man card, I
Okay.
guess. I mean, by far, number one is Jordan versus Dominique at the Chicago Stadium, which I think is like the pinnacle of the event.
Mm-hmm.
You had the two of them just, I mean, just like
Back and forth.
crazy dunk after crazy dunk. I used to have that on VHS. God only knows where that is. I'm sure my parents have long thrown it away, but
Bad.
I would pop that in and just watch Jordan dunk from the free throw line. And clearly, I'm showing my bias, but man, that was my absolute favorite. But yeah, there's been so many. The Vince Carter ones, like you said. I mean, he had a couple just like mind blowing dunks back in the day. The
Oh
one
yeah.
with it when his arm went through the
Yeah.
rim. Yeah, exactly. That one is insane. Uh, yeah, those are just off the top of my head. Those are probably the most memorable.
It the guy
I should
who
say D Brown actually was pretty memorable when he did it with the Reebok pumps. I don't know if you remember that one.
see I that was a little format. I know what you're talking about, but the guy who and then we can obviously move on. Jason Richardson to me gets a raw deal. He is an unbelievable dunker, and he had a couple of monster showings. Reverse through the legs one
Yeah,
year, which some really good dunks in some bad competitions.
yeah. I think different discussion for a different time, but he's kind of a lost player in general. He was an incredible athlete and dunker and scorer. I mean, he was incredible.
Yeah, he was those war on the wrong Warriors teams, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's fun. I'll still watch it. You hope you get a couple good dunks. And we'll see. It's a break for a lot of NBA grinders for sure. It's nice to just sit back and have some fun.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So I guess that moves then into Sunday. I think our least favorite part of the weekend with the actual game. They switched it up, threw in a wrinkle with the whole drafting of the teams, which I like that component. And they televised the draft this year, which I think made good entertainment. And you had LeBron, on TV, just hours after the AD, fiasco kind of ended with the trade deadline. So it made some good TV, and the teams themselves are interesting to look at. Do you have any kind of thoughts on the actual game? I mean, it's so hard to know.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I believe Team LeBron is. What do you have it in front of you? 6, 7 point favorite, something like that.
Yeah, it's 5.5 or 6.
Okay. Honestly, just on gut feel, yeah. Do I think his team is better on paper? Yeah, I do. But in a game like this, I probably would take the points just on merit, just because it's so unpredictable. Uh, if I do make a play here, it would again similar to the Rising Stars game. It would be on the MVP. I think you can pick a couple guys, have some fun,
Yeah,
and hope that they kind of get going. Similar to what I said about Trae Young, probably a guard for me. Whether it's the hometown Kemba, someone like Russ, who always seems to play hard even in an All-Star game,
yeah,
rack up the points and steals and whatnot.
yeah, yeah. Russ, I think he's won it 2 years now.
Yeah,
Won it
he's
2 years in a row because he, as you know, I mean, he's just going to go balls out, no
yeah,
question.
he only has one speed. He just
Yeah,
kind of plays how he plays.
yeah,
So it really isn't a huge. I will be focused, obviously. Hopefully the golf will be back on track by then on Sunday, and I'll be
yeah.
sweating that. We'll see what's going on at the old Genesis. But maybe a stab at an MVP here or there.
Yeah, yeah, we'll talk about the genesis here for sure in a minute. But yeah, I think I'm on the same page. I'll probably maybe throw something at one of the MVP odds. Uh, One crazy long shot one could be Dwayne Wade. I mean, I don't know if he's going to get enough minutes to be
That
able to score enough, but it's happened before where you get like these swan song games, and it's kind of the feel good. He's going out and let's just give him the MVP because he put up 15 points and his team won. Uh, so he's
there's
at 40-1 right now, from what I've seen, around that range. So it might be worth a stab, just super long shot, just a little sprinkle.
no. There certainly can be cases for that. I tried that theory in the Super Bowl with Gronk. Didn't exactly work, but the theory was right.
Yeah,
In a game like this too, where it's not like it's a physical game. So like Dwayne Wade, he can get his. There's no doubt. It's just how many minutes will he play to justify it.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And I feel like if he actually starts hitting a few shots, they may let him stay on or give him a few extra minutes. in the fourth quarter. And if it's a close game, maybe they bring him back in. It's so hard. I mean, we're just kind of like throwing darts at this to try and
Absolutely.
so it's entertaining and it's fun. And like you said, hopefully Sunday we'll have better things to be sweating than the All Star game.
That's the plan.
That is the plan.
We'll say, but it's yeah. I mean, that's all you can really do with this. You can't get too crazy with it because there's just so much unpredictability.
Yeah, exactly. Did you want to get into? We spoke earlier about some college basketball. I know there's a couple decent games tonight, and then maybe we could look at some futures and see if this
Sure.
comes out to you. I know you
Um,
wanted to talk about Northern Kentucky. They played tonight at Wright State.
This is this is strictly business. That's what I'll say here because Northern Kentucky is one of my favorite teams. I bet them all the time. I do not like them tonight. I'm on the other side of this game. So they are leading the horizon. Wright State is in second. They played already this year. It was in Northern Kentucky, who's very strong at home. 4-point win for Northern Kentucky. They now go to Wright State tonight, who's won 3 straight. Spread sits Wright State's favorite by a point and a half, I see. And unfortunately for my Norse, I think the home team takes care of business, levels that series tonight. Northern Kentucky is a very good team, but away from home, they've really struggled. Lost a couple games on the road in recent weeks, and this is a game that if Wright State wants even a remote chance to grab the 1 seed, they have to win the game. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, and I think they do, unfortunately. So that's the one game. Friday's a little light. It's the Ivy League plays tonight, so you can look to Princeton. They got a tough game against Harvard. Their best player, who's been suspended, has come back, but nothing too strong, to be honest. I'll probably wait for tomorrow and see what's what.
Gotcha. So you're going against your favorite team tonight.
That's. I
The
think
harsh world, but business
it's
is
tough.
business.
That's what you got to do. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a good pulse with this team. I kind of stayed away the last couple times they were on the road. They really struggled. They came home, they smoked Detroit. Then they were a 10-point favorite against Oakland, one going away again. This is just a tough spot. This game just inherently means more for Wright State than it does for Northern Kentucky. And it's tough to beat a team twice, obviously, a good team rather.
Yeah, and certainly being at home and in that kind of must-win position and being such a short favorite, I mean that tells you something right there that a lot of money is probably coming in on the other side to only be a 1.5 point favorite.
Absolutely. And this is again, they're going to battle it out. I think pretty clearly for that automatic, tourney berth in a couple weeks. They're the best teams in this conference, but I just have a feeling that Wright State kind of gives them a pretty good taste of medicine tonight, and then they will meet on a neutral court for a conference tournament time, and we'll see who can take the 2-1 series for the automatic berth.
Yeah, I like this pick. I'm probably going to tail you on that one, and I think this is a good time to kind of reinforce, that at Awesemo we have the premium Slack, and
Absolutely.
you're in there often, and I'm in there in the sports betting channel, and especially with college basketball where things move quickly and you get news that comes in quickly that maybe you can't find elsewhere. It's a really good resource, so we definitely recommend, certainly for all subscribers, to get into that channel, and people who are interested in the product. We can get you a coupon code, and we'll get you in, and you can experience everything that we have to offer. But on the betting side, definitely with the Slack channel and some of the new tools and features that we're working on and are going to be coming out, we think it's going to be a world-class product.
No doubt. And it's all sports. We have some really sharp tennis people providing picks there. A lot of fun too. You get in there, you talk some games, have some fun with it. You can sweat as a community. That's always one of my favorite parts about all of this.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And this weekend is a good weekend for that too. Like, people will be having fun. It's the All-Star weekend. There's golf, there's NASCAR, basketball. There'll be a lot going on.
Yeah, and Chad, I appreciate that. It's true. Any sport, you give me a set a line, and I'll talk it. Tennis, college basketball, whatever's up on the docket. So before we transition, yeah, in terms of futures, it's tough. Obviously, some of these teams, Tennessee's a team that I jumped on early in the year. I got some good value there. They're playing very well. If you want a team that could, I think, make a very dark horse run, and I don't have the odds in front of me, It's fresh off an absolute collapse, and I had them money line against Duke. It's Louisville. They're a very solid team, notwithstanding that collapse at home. Just a very strong unit. They've got guys they can shoot. They have good guards. They have size. Come tournament time, they're going to be a middling seed, but they're a tough out. If you want a team that I think certainly can get through the first weekend, then they're going to have some tough, but you could hedge out at that point. Maybe they make a deep run. And you're talking major long odds. They're not going to be one of the favorites at all.
Yeah, I was looking to see if I could find them kind of real quickly, but I don't see it.
They're very deep. Obviously for me, if I had to pick who I think the best team is, I think it's Virginia. They've got the stain of last year that they'll have to wash away.
Yeah.
But all in all, the way they play is just phenomenal. They've lost twice, both to Duke. Other than that, they're perfect on the year. They just went to North Carolina. Very impressive team.
Yeah, but if last year can't motivate them,
that's right,
going forward, then certainly nothing will, because you're right. I mean, that is a stain that obviously no other team has ever had to deal with, or
so bad.
And for them to even be playing as well as they are now says something. But they're going to be, I mean, just so extra fired up once the tournament starts.
Yeah, it is what it is, and I will say, as much as I like the way they play, when you play like that, there's just not a lot of points. So if a team gets going, you could have a problem. Having said that, and there's no excuse, but DeAndre Hunter, who's their best player, he was hurt and he did not play in that game. He is back, and they ain't going to be losing to a 16. Obviously, they're going to be they'll be there at the end this year. I feel pretty confident in that.
Yeah, I think so too. I've liked them for most of the season, and like you said, their only blemishes are against Duke.
Yeah, no shame in that, obviously.
Yeah, so not going to lose too many points with the committee on those losses, and they'll probably see them again. Assuming it plays out in the tournament, in the conference tournament, and then it's just game on it after that.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of teams up there that I don't know. I don't know how good Tennessee really is. Them and Kentucky play tomorrow. That's going to be a good test for both teams.
Yeah.
Kentucky's young and they're getting better. They did just lose to LSU. That was a horrible, horrible goaltend call. How that's not reviewable, I don't know, but we'll see. I'm not super confident. I prefer the ACC teams, honestly, in terms of who I think is the best.
Yeah, I was just getting a flashback to a pass interference non-call. I don't know what to say.
You win some, you lose some. Yeah, I guess I can't complain about that. But we'll see. Obviously, the regular season's winding down. We're going to be talking conference tournaments. We'll definitely break down, pick a couple winners of who we think in some of these lesser conferences, because every conference gets an automatic bid. That's a load of fun to try to pick a couple winners.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. We're really going to have a lot of coverage this year, starting with the conference tournaments, and then, of course, building into the actual big dance. So stay tuned. We'll have a lot of written content, a lot of video content, breaking down all those tournaments. Like you said, the conference tournaments, especially the smaller ones, I think you still have a little bit less efficient market and maybe some softer lines. Again, it's difficult, but you can dig in and find some potential spots that you're not going to find in the bigger conferences.
Certainly. And one, obviously, I'm going to be writing about this. We're going to be talking about this. I will say, though, I think the best thing to do if you do want to bet them is look at the formats. Not every conference is the same. Some don't use a neutral site. Some, the higher seed is at home. Some teams have double buys. Other teams have to play all the way through. So right off the bat, you can kind of identify, man, if this team is the number one seed, they're going to be at home and they get a bye for the first two rounds, whereas some other conferences, it's a neutral site and they have to play all the way through.
Yeah, great point. So understanding the dynamics of each tournament is critical, because like you said, if you have and they're not the same. That's the key, right? And maybe people don't realize the extent that these things differ, because you can really get a huge advantage. Obviously, if you have a bye, you're a home team. I mean, these are things you just have to know going in, and this is something that we'll get into a lot more detail on, and Ben will kind of lead the charge with his expertise on betting these smaller tournaments, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, it's fun. A lot of these conferences I've seen, I watched Murray State last night, slipped by Austin Peay right at the buzzer.
Yeah.
Could have went to overtime, but these are teams that you're going to see them in March. Some of them because they're going to make it, and it's good to have a little profile of what you can expect when they're the 14 seed playing the 3 seed that you really like.
Yeah, and that's where you get those opportunities just because you have that knowledge base and you've handicapped these teams and followed these teams where the public is just always going to bet those favorites in the
Always.
3-14 match. It's just always going to happen in that matchup.
Yep. No, it's true. So it's gonna be fun times obviously ahead in the college basketball world. We'll keep our eye on that.
Yeah, looking forward to that. We'll definitely build up a lot of content as we get closer, and then, and like I said, we'll have a lot to offer on the site as we get into the conference tournament week. More than 1 week at this point now, almost 2 full weeks, and then into the tournament. Why don't we talk real quickly here about golf?
Yeah.
You are the golf man. I am local here in Southern California, and I look out my window, and it's starting
raining?
to get cloudy, not rainy, but it might be raining soon. So obviously yesterday we had almost an unprecedented event. I guess it had happened about 5 or 6 years ago where they basically reset the whole tournament. You had 10 or 15 guys on the course. Some were under par already and the scores were wiped. Do you remember that happening? I know I read that it happened before.
It's happened. I don't remember that ever happening.
Yeah.
I was very confused. Spieth benefited, obviously, but you know what? It's a long tournament. If it's not going to make a big deal in the end, but yeah. So we've got what's happening just for people. So the guys who started yesterday, they have now finishing their rounds, and the PM wave from yesterday is teeing off. They're going to play straight through, so they're going to try to get all first and second round 36 holes in today. Hopefully that original AM group can tee off late tonight and maybe get some holes in, but you're going to be looking at them finishing their second round tomorrow morning. So if you are planning, if you're a dangerous person, if you're playing this showdown slate, more power to you. But keep in mind that, some of the times are going to be altered, and that's assuming no delay. If there's another delay, all bets are off, and a lot of guys are going to be playing their second round on Saturday.
Yeah, from what I've been hearing, that there is a chance that it could rain again this afternoon, and that it's really going to put a wrinkle. If they're off the course for a couple hours, it's really going to make it difficult for people to finish today. You're going to have a lot of golfers playing a lot of holes tomorrow just to get to the cut point. So definitely will put a wrinkle into showdowns and kind of these matchups going into the weekend.
Yeah, it's tough to really gauge anything, even live betting right now, because you've got guys done, you've got guys who are about to play 30 more holes. So I'll probably after the show jump in Slack, see what we can glean in terms of maybe a couple guys who are striking it well, who had some windy conditions yesterday, or someone right now who looks. The one benefit of playing 36 holes is if you I could guarantee you, Spieth wishes he could just keep playing right now. So if someone gets on a run today and they get to play 2 straight rounds, you could see someone post a very big score. And some of these guys are just getting underway now.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't think sometimes that that's an advantage, but you're right. If somebody gets hot and gets the chance to keep playing, they could post 2 really low scores.
Absolutely. That is one of the benefits where someone like Spieth, there's a very real chance he doesn't even tee off until it could be tomorrow. And that's tough because he's really rolling it.
Yeah, he is. I looked really quickly just at the odds to win the tournament. And like you said, this is so in flux. This is another, it's basically live betting, right? I mean, we talked about betting in games a little bit with football, and with golf, you have so many unique opportunities where certainly here with the weather conditions that you can find value that you maybe wouldn't find. Somebody hasn't teed off yet. They haven't played anything. You've got Spieth at basically 4-1 to win the tournament right now, which, like you said, I mean, I'm probably going to fade that.
Yeah, that's a little. Yeah, there were some good guys who posted. Obviously, Tony Finau, I thought played very well, bogey free.
Yeah.
But you've got guys like Rahm, Bryson. To me, Tommy Fleetwood, who had a quiet 1 under par. I could see him going out tomorrow and getting back in the mix. So there's some options. You just want to be cognizant of really the path of how these guys are going to be playing.
Yeah, I think more than anything, it's really understanding when they're going to be playing.
Absolutely.
How many holes in a row, really understanding their situation. You and I were talking before, we both like Fleetwood, and, he had struggled yesterday. He was 2 over and then this morning started to pick it up and got a few strokes back.
He's
But
he's such
again,
a
he's
high,
not.
yeah, such a high variance guy, and that's kind
Yeah,
of why I don't mind. You look and you're like, why do you want to back a guy who's 6 strokes off the lead already? Because when Fleetwood gets going, he can rattle off 4 or 5 birdies in a row. And that's the risk when you're taking long odds. You'll live with if he
yeah,
does nothing. It's very binary. You just want to get him back in the mix.
yeah, exactly. With golf, you get these super long odds, and just being in the mix is obviously the key because so much can happen, between 2 and 3 stroke difference over 6 8 holes. If
Easy.
you can get Fleetwood at a long shot and he's only 3 4 back, let's say by the weekend, then you're feeling pretty good about it.
Absolutely.
Is there anybody else that you had seen as more of a long shot, knowing, I guess, what we know already, which isn't a ton, but
Yeah, it's tough. Obviously, I don't know what the guys are doing who have just teed off, the
yeah.
Rorys of the world. Um, you know, a couple guys that I thought played very well who have finished. RCB, Rafa Cabrera Bello,
Hmm.
posted a nice quality round. And you want to look at, I think the scores that 1, 2, 3 under range, their odds aren't going to be too compressed, but they got a good start. Maybe they can go out and you really said it. My goal if I take a long shot is just be in contact going to the weekend. They don't
Yeah.
need to be winning the tournament. You just want them where if they put together a good weekend, they're going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's make the cut and then go
That's
from
step
there. Let's
one.
start with that.
Yep.
Kind
It's
of important
it's absolutely step one in DFS and in the betting world, obviously.
for sure, for sure. Uh, I guess I'd be remiss without mentioning Tiger. Obviously the hasn't played in a while, and
Big cat.
yeah, hasn't. I don't think has teed off yet, or if he has, it's since we started.
Yeah, he's underway. I saw him play one hole before we jumped on, so
Okay.
he's we'll see. It's going to be interesting. I know there are bets. Will he win a major this year? Obviously, no is a pretty sizable favorite, as it should be. It's very difficult. I think it's these tournaments. I know they're not the biggest deal to Tiger, but I think he has to show something here in Mexico. You don't have to win by any stretch, but I'd be pretty disappointed if he has some ugly finishes in terms of his Masters outlook. I think he needs to build up rather than when he could just turn it on in the old days.
Yeah, I think me particularly, like, I'm interested in just seeing kind of the form where
Mhm.
he's at as we get closer to the Masters. We've got a few months still, or about 6 weeks or so. So we definitely want to see what he looks like and what his health is and how he's playing. Yeah, you mentioned that
Be
prop.
disappointed if he has some ugly finishes in terms of his Masters outlook. I think he needs to build up rather than when he could just turn it
Got a
on.
little reverb going on. Yeah, I think me particularly, like, I'm interested in just seeing.
There we go.
What's going
All
on,
right.
Phil?
Phil. All right, so let me do a quick introduction here.
Perfect
We got
segue.
perfect timing, my friend. Phil is our NASCAR expert, and we wanted to get somebody on who could, number one, educate, I think, certainly me, and I think Ben as well.
Oh, definitely not me. I am a blank slate in the NASCAR world. So
We're equally blank slates, Phil. So let us know who's going to win the Daytona 500 so we can go bet on him. And if you can give us some long shots, we'd love that too. And if you can explain, I guess, why everybody has the same chance of winning, that would be great. Welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. Basically, the thing that you need to know when it comes to Daytona, and this is basically the same thing with Talladega, they are just gigantic behemoth tracks. We're talking about 2.5 miles long, steeply banked. Because of the size and the shape, it allows the cars to basically, the drivers, to stay wide open on the gas nearly the entire length of the track. This became an issue in the late 80s when drivers were hitting over 210 miles per hour. So for the sake of the drivers, NASCAR started putting restrictor plates on the carburetors to limit the amount of airflow going into the engine to cut down the speed. So now guys are averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of 185 to 190. Well, with the restrictor plate, you've basically neutered all of these cars to they're nearly the same.
okay.
You know, the high the high-ranking teams like Joe Gibbs, Hendricks, these guys who have just unlimited amounts of money, their cars are no better than these one-off teams that are just coming down to Daytona to run the 500 because of the restrictor plate. You put all of these cars that are basically the same, running the same horsepower at this track in the draft, mere centimeters apart, and you have a scenario where you could practically see any driver from any team win this race.
Yeah, that's more than I've ever known or ever been told about NASCAR.
Yep, I just tripled my total NASCAR knowledge in 2 minutes. I like it. So does that mean, I just want to throw it, does that mean that if you had to bet it, you'd maybe go for some of the longer shots on the board?
Yeah, something that I highlighted in the article is that, of course, you have some big name guys throughout the years that have won this race, but sprinkled in the history of the Daytona 500 is you'll have these guys from these one-off teams or these smaller names that just find a way to navigate through the crashes, through the big ones, make their way into the top 5, top 10 towards the end of the race, make their move, and they end up taking the trophy home.
So I'm guessing then in other races, there's big advantages, with these more established teams, and, they have more money that they can produce better cars. So you're saying here there really is no built-in advantage. Really, everybody has the same car and is on a level playing field, using that analogy.
Yeah. Next week when we go to Atlanta, the teams with more money are gonna rise to the top. They are going to be on full display, showing why they are the best in NASCAR because of all of the unlimited money that they've got to pour into resources, into testing, blah 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 blah, paying for the best drivers. But here this weekend, everybody's on the same playing field.
Well, that's great to know. And as you mentioned earlier, you wrote a betting preview for our site. You also provide other written content for us, and we have a very robust NASCAR package with rankings and content, and certainly we can tell by your knowledge level that our NASCAR product is pretty amazing. So we appreciate that input. So not to take too much from your article, can you I guess give us a couple of the shorter favorites, the guys that seem like the more well-known guys who we could take a stab at, and then I guess we'll talk maybe more some of the value, more long shot plays that might work.
Yeah, when I pinned that article on Tuesday, the top 5 favorites were Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, both teammates at Penske, and then tied for the second most odds was Denny Hamlin, who's won the 500 before, Kevin Harvick, who won the first duel last night, and then Clint Bowyer. And Clint Bowyer was an interesting name, but Clint leads the majority of the second duel last night, and immediately his number jumped up to plus 800. So right now, if you look at the site that I reference in the article, you can get both Joey and Brad at plus 700, Bowyer at plus 800, and then Harvick and Hamlin are still there at plus 1,000.
Not bad.
Is there anyone out of that list that particularly jumps out to you? Or I mean, like you said, it's hard to really get an advantage.
Yeah, as good as the Mustangs, Ford had been running a different type of vehicle the last few years, but they've transitioned to a Mustang type body. If you looked at this car, it's nowhere close to a Mustang, but it's a different, improved vehicle. And in both duels, the Mustangs they look fantastic. It really looked like Ford came down here to Daytona with a really improved vehicle compared to last year, and it's showing off. Ford's won both of the duels last night, and if we're going to transition that into Sunday, then I think you really have to give a hard look at Logano, who's going to start on the second row. You have to look also at Kevin Harvick, who looked pretty good in that first duel. And if this is just going to be a pile on the Mustangs, then Boyer looked pretty good last night as well. Boyer and Harvick, their histories aren't on par anywhere close to what Logano has done at plate races. But for a little bit better number, you can get both the Stewart-Haas teammates and Harvick and Boyer.
Awesome, great breakdown there. Any thoughts on, I guess, some of the more long shot guys? Is there anybody who stands out to you? There's definitely a lot on the board who are good value. Assuming that they can be in contention, towards the end of the race.
Yeah, some of the guys that I really liked. One was Chris Buescher, racing for JGR. One of the improvements that they were able to get is they've got an agreement with one of the major teams, Hendrick. Now that they're getting Hendrick horsepower into their engines. Now, yeah, that means nothing extra this weekend, but it's nice to know that this smaller team has an agreement with a larger team. They're getting research and development from them. And with a better vehicle for Chris Buescher, who has a pretty good plate history going back the last few races. If you look at the race sheets, which are pinned in the Slack chat, and you look at Buescher's history at Daytona the last 6 races, it's really it's not that great. But if you look at what he's done the last 4 races, the last 6 races, you can tell that he has undergone a dramatic improvement in his ability to race in these plate races, and you can get him at really good odds. And another guy that I like is Michael McDowell. You look back at the last 6 races, he's got an average finish of 13.2, only 1 DNF during that time, and in those other 5 races, top 15 each time. So once again, if McDowell can maneuver his way to the front, there's no reason to think that he can't find a way to find a drafting partner and find his way to the lead.
Awesome. That's
something for your viewers to consider also is that affiliations matter so much more in this race than they will the rest of the year. We're not just talking about teammates, but we're also talking about the manufacturers. And if a guy with a long shot can be able to team up with another Chevy, another Toyota, another Ford, and find themselves together, then they can easily slingshot past the leader. It happened a couple of years ago with 2 teammates from a very small team, David Gilliland and David Reagan. They were able to find their way in 3rd and 4th. They, with a couple of laps left, they moved out of the single line, pulled even with the leader, and on the last lap, Reagan shot forward and ended up winning that race. And God knows that his odds at that time were probably, plus 60, plus 80,000.
Wow. Awesome. Well, if that wasn't the best advertisement for our NASCAR package and our NASCAR Slack channel, I don't know what is. So
I'm gonna play now. I'm gonna jump in some NASCAR this week. Maybe a first time ever for me.
Yeah, I probably will be the same. It will be my first time ever too. So, Phil, really appreciate you coming on and giving us a ton of knowledge and a ton of information. Certainly way more than Ben or I had ever imagined or dreamed of knowing. So really appreciate you coming on, and good luck this weekend.
Good luck to you guys.
Thanks. Appreciate you coming on, and that's a wrap for our show. We'll be back next week. We'll have more college basketball. We'll have some other stuff that we'll get into. We'll talk about some golf, and we'll see everybody next Friday. Have a good one.